Right, guys, we have some of the update coming about the Air India Boeing 787 crash, which happened probably because of the captain's action. At least it is according to the Wall Street Journal report. Well, that's the reason why I do not publish this video on my aviation channel, because so far this information is not yet coming officially from Investigative Committee, but before the previous reports from the Wall Street Journal, and they refer to some of the officials, United States officials, who are familiar with the investigation, so the information about those switches was correct. It was coming from the same source. So this information about particular individual who shut down two of the engines of the airplane, well, I guess it could be correct. There is the high chance for it to be correct. So recorded conversation between the two pilots of Air India 787, which crashed last month in Ahmedabad, India, reveals that it was the more experienced captain, and yeah, there was the first officer, captain, two persons in the cockpit, and it was captain who deliberately shut down the fuel supply to the engines. This is according to the Wall Street Journal, which cites United States sources familiar with the internal investigation of the incident. The crash resulted, we understand what it has resulted into. The conversation between the captain, Sumit Sabharwal, 56 years old, and co-pilot Cliff Kunder, 32 years old, was reportedly analyzed as part of the preliminary inquiry to the tragedy. They just do not specify it in preliminary report. And I would say that we have lots of the questions to this preliminary report. I don't like how they made it, this Indian Investigation Committee, because they do not share lots of the information in that, which they already have, which creates some of the conspiracies about pilot section. So maybe they don't want for now to blame captain, but they know that it was the deliberate action by captain to shut down two of the engines. They just maybe don't want to rise the scandal ahead, but it is already happening. Like, people understand that pilots did it, some of those pilots, and it is evident now, according to this information, that it was captain, and I also tend to believe in that. So just seconds after the aircraft took off from the runway, the co-pilot asked why the fuel supply switches for two engines had been turned off to cut off, effectively stopping the engines from receiving fuel. So it was co-pilot who asked that. Why have you switched two of the engines? And I believe co-pilot didn't do it. First of all, because he was a pilot flying. Then you're pilot flying, you basically fly the airplanes. You have both of the hands on the yoke and you command to the pilot monitoring, this time it was captain, to manipulate the stuff in the cockpit, to rise up the gear, extend flaps, retract flaps, whatsoever. And captain, he had his hand free, one hand at least, and he shut down two of the engines one by one. I already mentioned it in the pilot blog channel that there was 1 second gap between two of the switches moved to cut off. So it only could happen not accidentally by single movement, but deliberate action. And yeah, some of the expert YouTubers in aviation, like for example Blancaleria, they say that it could be just a bumpy flight, then you secure the thrust levers with your hand and accidentally switch off engines. I think it's not possible. I've flown 737 who has exactly the same switches in a new modification. They're quite robust. You cannot switch them off. You need deliberate action for that, at least 2, maybe 3 fingers to select them down even, yeah. So I have no doubts that pilots, one of the pilots, it seems like it was this one, switched off 2 of the engines deliberately. So there was the conversation between pilots. Co-pilot asked why you switched off the engines, the cut-off switches set to cut off. Captain said, no, I didn't do, like he denied this action. So far, we do not have exact words from the cockpit voice recorder published of what they really said, but it seems like, yeah, definitely it was kept. I heard also idea that pilot who said, why you cut off the engines, he did it himself to accuse the other pilot and like switch off. And why did you do it? He said, oh, I didn't do it. Like to mess up with investigation later on. Maybe, you know, pilot has huge life insurance and he wants his relatives to receive the money. So it wasn't his fault. in this crash or something. Like, I just tried to come out with any sort of the possibilities why pilot decided to do it, you know. There was the medical condition, actually, of the father, it seems like, of Sumit Sabal, of the captain, and they really struggle with the funds, from what I understood. So it was not okay situation for one of the pilots, 100%. I also heard like the rumors about Cliff Kunder, like he's a good-looking guy, kind of fancy, young, and some people say that he's gay, and being gay in India is kind of terrible, so he decided to commit self-cancellation together with all of the passengers and people on the ground. I don't believe in that speculation, no. And yeah, we all come like to the point that there are speculations elsewhere from every point. Even I start to speculate, but my speculations are based on information, like at least some part of the evidence. Like we have preliminary report, we have the information from the Wall Street Journal, which was correct before with other information, so partially I may trust it for now. So yeah, the main thing that few switches were moved from run to cut off 1 second apart. You cannot do it, like it's not accident. Even without the security mechanism, then you need to pull and switch them off. Even without it present, even with the failure of this mechanism, 1 second was apart, so it was not a single action, 2 actions, because Captain allegedly here, and I believe that it was Captain 2, selected 2 of the engines to cut off deliberately. Again, I'm saying the same stuff, because we have the evidence. Time matters. So the engines lost the power, and probably for the next 10 seconds before those switches were put back to run positions, first officer who was flying the airplane just panicked. He tried to understand what is happening, and probably he put himself the engine start switches to run again. But it was too late, it was a very low altitude, and this all happened because of the single man's action. So preliminary findings in investigation have not placed blame, though sources close to investigation speculated that fuel cutoff may have been intentional, suggesting that need for criminal investigation. And by the way, this one was opened right away, even before the preliminary report was published. Meanwhile, FAA administration issued that fuel cutoff switches were completely safe and no mechanical or maintenance failures were found in the aircraft. So they recovered the debris, they found out those switches, they analyzed. Here we have those switches, so obviously the plastic part melted down, but the mechanism is made out of metal, and they found that it was working. So they were staying in a run position because the other pilot, probably first officer, selected those to normal run position for the phase of the flight. So the condition of the switches was not a factor, it was the action of one of the pilots, a captain. And I got this video in the recommendations. This is the captain of one of the American airlines. I watched it after the preliminary report was published, and my thoughts are more or less the same with this guy. Now I have more proofs from the Wall Street Journal that show that it was the captain's action. So let's listen to this guy. I want to expedite it a little, maybe for better review.
My name is Dan Greider, Captain Dan Greider. I was an airline captain.
Captain, okay. Captain is the good rank in aviation, good position. I also enjoy to be a captain, but it doesn't mean that you're like way more competent than other pilots who are first officers. There are fantastic first officers as well, co-pilots, and yeah, one day you're a captain, the other day you can be first officer, so yeah.
For many years on numerous different airplanes, and I want to talk about Air India 171. Basically, as this report has just recently come out, lots of further speculation, and it's now come down to 2 basic schools of thought. I'm going to give you my opinion and my speculation. I normally stick to general aviation accidents and trying to reduce the general aviation fatal accident rate. This one is interesting to me, and I did used to fly the 777. I never flew the 787, but I'm very familiar with these fuel cutoff.
Yeah, also very familiar with those fuel cutoff switches because they're the same for 737. Latest modifications.
Switches, and a little bit of speculation here on everybody's part. Basically, it's down to 2 schools of thought: suicide or mechanical.
It's not really a suicide, it's the massive murder, I would call it even. Because if you say that it's suicide, you like dishonor the deaths of all of the people on board and on the ground. So I would call it a massive murder.
Here's a little clip of the fuel control switches going from off to on. This is what they look like on almost all the Boeings. They're very clunky, very mechanical, and very deliberate to turn them off and on. This is what they look like right here. Here's
So you see, you have to use 3 of the fingers to switch them, to pull them a little and switch.
Captain Steve's school of thought on his theory.
Why is that significant in our theory that it was done by one of the pilots?
Captain Steve is a well-respected airline captain. And then we've got one from Blanco. Blanco's never been a captain, but he's put out a lot of videos. And
What it has to do whether he's a captain or not, well.
Here's his theory. He's leaning more towards the mechanical. And here's what he has to say about the act of these switches being accidentally bumped by bumping down the runway during takeoff.
There's the possibility that if somebody's guarding the throttles and you're bouncing around, you could accidentally hit those cutoff switches, and if the guard is not working correctly, you could accidentally knock those switches.
Yeah, I don't agree with this either. Like I said in one of the videos that I don't like Captain Steve's speculation, and he really speculates a lot without evidence. But here I also more tend to agree with Captain Steve, like I 100% agree with Captain Steve and this pilot Dan, ex-pilot, but still the captain rank is with him through his life. Blancaleria then he first time said about this stuff that accidental bump or something. Yeah, it was really strange for me. It was really.
So I'm not much on this bumping the switches.
Yeah, it's
I have
unreal.
never seen these mechanical locks to be anything but very, very robust and sturdy. And there's a couple points that we're going to make real quick because this is a very, very short video about Air India 171. A couple points. Captain Steve, I think, is right on point here. Without saying so, he's gone out on a limb and said this is suicide, and he's given special attention to mental health for pilots and the ability to get help for pilots when they need help.
Yeah, it's a big issue in aviation. Like if you have, like there is no check. They check our mental health and our psychometric portrait, then you join the airline, but no one monitors your abilities, your mental state during your career. They monitor your physical health, but they do not put at all attention on your mental health. It is completely absent, like only by the point you enter the airline. They have some of the tests with psychometric tests, you communicate with psychologists, but later on, no, you're good to go, and I think it could be like the turning point for industry to focus more on mental health of the pilots rather than their physical health, because and actually our physical health also dependent on our mindset.
In the United States, if you raise the flag and need help, you're off to the races, and you're going to lose your medical, you're going to lose your license, you're going to lose your livelihood. And I think Captain Steve has an excellent point on.
Yeah, it shouldn't be like a punishment. Like if your mental health is not okay, if you have issues, like it shouldn't mean that you're going to lose your job or something. Just extra vacation paid by the airline. It could be a perfect variant, but you know we live in greedy world, so just tell airline that they're obligated to pay you extra leave, and they would say, okay, pilots start to speculate about their mental health. So it's kind of the thin ice here, very thin, and it's very hard to control what could be regulated here. But for sure something should be done, and it shouldn't be done as one more extra punishment for pilots. Otherwise it could lead to more mental health issues of pilots.
That he has not come right out in the open and said that this is a pilot suicide, but that is the camp that he's in. Let's listen again to Captain Steve's theory.
Why is that significant in our theory that it was done by one of the pilots?
Now there's me. I am in Captain Steve's camp. I'm going to come right out and tell you, I do think it was suicide. And I'm going to tell you the two things about the culture over here that no one is talking.
I'm not even in this camp, I'm sure. It was the deliberate action, so it was a murder.
About yet. Number one, universally since the dawn of time, all suicides are premeditated. It's not possible to have an unpremeditated suicide. If you're going to kill yourself or kill somebody and do a murder suicide like this was, it's meditated, it's thought out, it's planned.
Yeah, like it happened with German wings before. Then pilot he planned, then captain would go out from the cockpit, he would close the door, he would deny opening. There is the option for deny. And he just put the airplane into the mountain.
Number two, in the Indian culture, their culture says that their honor, for their family honor and their disgrace, they cannot be labeled as a murder, suicide person. They're going to try to find a way for this to be either the other guy or for it to be unsolvable.
So that's why it was like also speculation, or one of the theories, that pilot who shut down the engine say to other, why did you do it? Then the pilot did it himself. So yeah, it is based on this theory.
I want you to take a look at the timeline on here. The report is just out here, and here's a few things that I've gleaned from the timeline. And the timestamps are in order here. I'll put them on the screen here for you, but here's the timestamps. At 42, the first fuel controller switch went to off. At 43, the second one went off. Then one pilot asked, why did you cut off? The other replied, I did not. Now, that's paraphrased from the report. I'm putting you in English terms here. Why did you cut off? I did not. There's a 10-second delay.
Yeah, because the other pilot was first officer, probably. He is much younger. He has less authority. And also in the Indian culture, like the captain authority is much, much bigger compared to the first officers. He didn't know what to do. Like he was panicking. He thought, okay, maybe I should put back those switches. And finally, he managed to put them back. So he was in a panic state for 10 long seconds. And maybe it wasn't even him who put the engine switches back to run. Maybe it was captain again, because we see that number 1 switch was turned to run and number 2 to run. You usually perform the actions at first action which is close to you. So engine number 1 is closer to captain. He turned one by one off, and he turned on also one by one. Then he saw that the airplane will not make it. So it's like one of the variants.
The time that the fuel switch got to cut off and it was returned to run. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're looking at this and saw that the other pilot, whoever it was, cut the fuel switches off, number one, why would you discuss it? Why? This is no time for discussion and 20 questions and asking him, why did you do that? The easy answer is turn it back on immediately. There's a 10-second gap in here between the time it went off and back on. The fuel control switch came back on 10 seconds later. We're going to simulate that. I'm going to do it with my hand. I'm the captain, and I'm sitting in the left seat. We've just rotated, and I reach down there, and I go off, off. Why did you do that? I did not.
Well, we don't know what they discussed, like, really, because they do not publish the information fully. But here's the simulation of if it was the silent moment.
On, 1, 2, 3, 4, on.
Okay.
There's 4 seconds between the time that the second fuel control switch was brought back to on. I think this is your captain in the left seat. This is my speculation. I think this is your captain in the left seat. Keep in mind, it was only a few seconds before impact that the captain said the words, Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. And then the sound of the first impact occurred, and then the recording.
Well, maybe captain said it. Maybe.
It stops just seconds after. His Mayday, 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 if that was the captain, was too cold, too calculating, and too perfect. It was rehearsed. Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. I think this was one of the pilots. I'm leaning towards this being the captain who did the murder-suicide. The co-pilot in the right seat, it was his takeoff. We know for sure it was the FO's takeoff. The other thing I want to know is why has it taken us this long? The cockpit voice recorders are area-specific, mic-specific. They know currently exactly who said what.
Yeah. Now, according to the Wall Street Journal, the first officer was wondering why captain cut off those switches.
Into which microphone each channel is picked up. The report is deliberately vague to not tell you which person in which seat said what. I believe that is a cover-up. The only thing I can deduce is that if you were flying and you saw that the other person switched those two off, number one, why would you talk about it? And number two...
Yeah, what? I would talk about it. I think everything is fine. Like, why did you switch the engines off? Come on. And we need to start them right away. Like, if they had put those switches on to run back again, there would have been the immediate relight, almost 100%. But after 10 seconds, no.
Why would you wait 10 seconds to correct it?
Yeah.
I want to know your thoughts on the matter. I am a captain. I'm previously a captain. I'm still flying as captain on many, many different airplanes even today. This is the captain's uniform that I used to wear.
Oh my god, he's so focused on the captain position and rank. Okay.
on a daily basis. And in the airline industry, these fuel control switches that I'm showing to you here right now are very robust, very mechanical.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like 100%. They're very robust. I don't believe that you can switch them off accidentally.
I'm not buying the Lario theory that bouncing down the runway, that these things could be arbitrarily.
Yeah, I also do not buy it, unfortunately, because I respect Blanco Lario, but he said like kind of strange stuff there.
Cut off.
In other words, if somebody was guarding the throttles with their hand behind the throttles while the other pilot was pushing the throttles up or thrust levers, that hand guarding the thrust levers or throttles could potentially hit those fuel control switches to the cutoff position.
No.
In this very short nutshell of a summary, my summary is, I think your guy in the left seat premeditated, did it. He had it all calculated out, and he made it sound like, why did you do it? The response was, I did not. And then he waited the appropriate amount of time to turn number one back on, waited another 3 seconds to turn the second one back on, and by that time, it's obviously too late. They never even raised the gear. Positive rate gear up never came. They never did it. It's the perfect cover-up for a murder-suicide. I'd like to know your thoughts.
Like, I agree with this. And yeah, unfortunately. But what should be done with this, guys? I don't know. Like, how can you control thoughts of people? Like, we are not robots after all, we are humans. It's kind of difficult to go into every head and try to find out. Yeah, maybe Neuralink of Elon Musk may help to dig down into the thoughts. But for now, no. You cannot control like every individual and aspects of the personal. Like, there should be a scrutiny about everything. Like, it should be the total, complete control of pilots. They may say, okay, many of the lives depend on pilots. We're gonna monitor their social media. We're gonna monitor everything connected with their personal lives. Maybe they would say like this after this case, but it's impossible still to achieve it. Like, it's dystopian ruling, I would say, over humans. Very bad that those cases continue to happen with pilot suicide, not suicide, but murders. Yeah, like it happened with German Wings, Egypt Air, I guess it was also. And yeah, there were some of the cases in history. Now it happened again. Oh my God, guys. This is crazy. Well, we'll see after all, but I tend to believe, or I believe it's better to say that it was Captain who did it. They need to search his history and whether he had some sort of the insurance, why he did it, but I believe it was Captain. Yeah, if you want to see the faces, this was the Captain and this was the first officer. Families, first officer again. Nice guy, flying, before was flying on Airbus A320, and it's sad that it happened, guys. It's very, very... And now with more information, this was the guy. Yeah, Indian news say that Indian pilots blame falsely, reports confirms, but we have other aviation experts also from India itself, ex-pilots or current pilots, who say that it was a deliberate action done by air crew. Well, guys, that's all what I want to say today. See ya.